Hi, my name is Jake. I'm 34 years old. My wife, Jenna, is 31, and I never thought I'd be the guy telling this kind of story. But here I am, ready to confess, to give you a tale filled with deception, betrayal, and a revenge so brutal, so complete, that even I almost felt bad for her. But first, let's rewind a few weeks so you can experience everything just like I did. You ever have a moment where something feels off, but you can't quite explain why? Like when you walk into a silent room and feel like someone was just talking about you. Or when you leave the house and suddenly get that nagging feeling you forgot something important, even though everything seems normal. That's what it felt like the night Jenna came home with the Rolex. It was a Tuesday. No holiday, no birthday, no reason for anything special. I was on the couch, half watching some documentary about deep-sea creatures, one of those shows you put on just to fill the silence, when I heard the front door swing open. Jenna walked in, her bag slung over one shoulder, looking tired but smug. She barely said hello before tossing something onto the kitchen counter with a soft thunk. A Rolex. Not just any Rolex, a limited edition model. I didn't know much about watches, but I knew enough to recognize one that cost as much as a down payment on a house. I blinked. She pulled off her blazer, kicked off her heels, and grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge like it was just another day. "What's this?" I asked, pointing at the watch. She glanced at it, unscrewing the cap on her drink. "Oh, company gift. A Rolex. As a gift. For what?" I asked, picking it up. It was heavy. "Real. Top performance," she said with a shrug, taking a sip of water. "Crushed my sales goals this quarter. You know how it is." I didn't. Because that's not how companies work. I wasn't some clueless guy. I understood sales. Commissions, bonuses, sure. A Rolex? That wasn't a performance reward. That was something else. And yet, what was I supposed to say? "No way. Your job wouldn't give you this?" So I nodded, smiled, let it go. But something was already shifting in my head. A slow, nagging itch. Because the moment Jenna walked out of the room, I picked up the watch again, turned it over, ran my thumb over the back. And there it was. Something so small, so subtle, that I wouldn't have noticed if I wasn't already suspicious. No engraving. Corporate gifts, especially high-end ones, always had engravings. A company logo. A date. A "thank you for your hard work." Something. This had nothing. It was just a Rolex. Brand new. Like someone had walked into a store and bought it off the shelf. And suddenly, the nagging feeling in my gut wasn't so easy to ignore. I tried to shake it off. Really, I did. It was just a watch. Maybe her company did give out ridiculous gifts. Maybe I was reading too much into it. So I let it go. For exactly 3 days. That Friday, I was paying some bills when I decided to check our shared credit card statement. It was something I did all the time, nothing suspicious, just making sure everything was in order. And that's when I saw it. A charge from the Windsor Hotel. Now, that might not sound strange at first. Maybe she grabbed lunch there. Maybe it was a business dinner. But the Windsor isn't the kind of place you go for lunch. It's a 5-star luxury hotel, the kind where a single night costs more than our mortgage. And the date? It was from last week. A night when Jenna was supposed to be out of town. I stared at the transaction, my brain scrambling for explanations. Maybe it was a company expense. Maybe they booked her a room before a flight. So I checked our bank account. The charge wasn't reimbursed. Came straight from our card. I sat back, fingers drumming against the desk. Could be innocent. Could be a mistake. But that nagging feeling? That itch in the back of my skull? It was getting worse. So, I did something I had never done in our entire marriage. Picked up her phone. I wasn't even planning to go through her messages. I just wanted to see her calendar, confirm her work trip dates. But right as I unlocked it, a notification popped up. A text. From a number that wasn't saved. "Miss you already. Can't stop thinking about last night." I felt my pulse in my throat. For a second, I didn't move. I just stared at the screen, the words burning into my brain. And then, the phone vibrated again. Another message. "Same time next week?" My hand clenched around the phone. My wife was supposed to be out of town. She wasn't. She was here, in the city, at the Windsor Hotel, and whoever this was, they were already planning their next meeting. I sat there, gripping Jenna's phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. The room felt smaller. The walls were pressing in. The air was thick, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I stared at that message, hoping, begging, for some kind of explanation. Maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe it was a joke. But deep down, I already knew. Jenna was cheating. And now I had to decide what to do with that information. I put her phone down, took a deep breath, then another. Confronting her wasn't an option. Not yet. If she was cheating, she'd lie. She'd gaslight me, spin it into some ridiculous misunderstanding, and I'd end up questioning my own reality. No, I needed proof. Real proof. So I got smart. I grabbed my keys, drove to the nearest tech store, and bought something small enough to fit in the palm of my hand. An AirTag. Now, I'm not proud of what I did next. That night, when Jenna got home and tossed her work bag onto the counter, I made small talk, asked about her day, acted normal, and when she stepped into the bathroom, I unzipped the side pocket of her bag, slipped the AirTag inside the lining, and zipped it back up. Took 2 seconds. My hands weren't even shaking, and just like that, I was about to find out exactly where my wife was going when she wasn't with me. The next night, Jenna claimed she had a networking event after work. I smiled, told her to have fun, watched as she kissed me on the cheek and walked out the door, her heels clicking against the floor. Then I grabbed my phone, opened the AirTag app, and watched her location pop up in real time. She wasn't at a restaurant. She wasn't at an event hall. She wasn't anywhere near a networking event. Her location? An underground parking garage. At her office. I just sat there, staring at the screen, my pulse hammering in my ears. She was supposed to be out, mingling with executives, making connections. Instead, she was alone in a dark parking lot. Or worse, she wasn't alone at all. I grabbed my keys, because suddenly, sitting at home and watching a blinking dot on my phone wasn't enough. I needed to see it for myself. I don't even remember the drive. One moment, I was sitting in my living room, staring at Jenna's location on my phone. The next, I was parked a block away from her office building, hands clenched around the steering wheel, heart pounding so hard I thought I might throw up. Her car was already there. I turned off my engine, slouched low in my seat, and waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then movement. The elevator doors at the far end of the parking garage slid open. And there she was, Jenna. She stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement. She looked relaxed. Not in a rush. Not guilty. Just at ease. And right behind her, Greg, her boss. He wasn't even trying to be subtle. His suit jacket was slung over one shoulder, his tie loosened, his face way too close to hers as they laughed about something. They weren't touching. Not in that moment. But it was all there, the body language, the way she tilted her head toward him, the way he leaned just a little too close. Then, right as he reached his car, he turned to her and pulled something from his pocket. A thick white envelope. I leaned forward, my pulse hammering. Jenna took it like it was nothing. Like this was routine. Like she'd done it 100 times before. She slipped the envelope into her purse, nodded at him, then casually checked her lipstick in the reflection of a tinted car window. That was it. No keys. No lingering touch. Just business as usual. And somehow, that was worse. Because this wasn't an affair fueled by passion or emotion. This was a transaction. 5. The proof in my hands. There's a moment in every man's life where he realizes he's been played. Some guys catch their wives sneaking out of a hotel room at 3 a.m. Some find lipstick stains on collars, perfume that doesn't belong, or mysterious restaurant receipts. Me? I watched my wife accept a mystery envelope full of cash in a parking garage like she was running some kind of low-budget crime syndicate. And you know what my first thought was? Ha! So I guess her company doesn't give out Rolexes after all. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers went numb, watching Jenna casually smooth down her skirt like she hadn't just committed marital treason right in front of me. Greg got into his car. Jenna walked to hers.
No rush. No guilt.
Just business as usual. And I just sat there. I should have jumped out, confronted her, slammed my hands on the hood of her car and screamed what the hell. But I didn't, because suddenly I realized something horrifying. She wasn't just cheating. She was comfortable doing it. She wasn't sneaking around, covering her tracks, looking over her shoulder. She wasn't scared of getting caught, which meant this wasn't her first time. And if I wanted to take her down, I needed to be just as patient. That night, Jenna came home smiling. I was at the kitchen table, pretending to scroll through my phone, when she waltzed in, dropped her bag, and sighed dramatically. Long day, I asked, keeping my voice light. She rolled her eyes. Ugh, you have no idea. Oh, I had an idea.
Crazy client.
I asked. She walked past me, heading for the fridge. Yeah, something like that.
I glanced at her bag.
The envelope was still in there, right next to her laptop. Now Jenna was organized. Too organized. She labeled everything, color-coded her emails, and kept her work files so perfectly arranged that even a robot would have been impressed. So when she disappeared into the bathroom, I made my move.
Unzipped her bag.
Pulled out the envelope, opened it, and there it was. More cash than I had ever held in my entire life. Not a check. Not a performance bonus. Straight up, untraceable $100 bills. I stared at it, something cold curling in my stomach. This wasn't a gift. This was a payment. And for the first time in our entire marriage, I felt like I was standing in my own house as a complete stranger. Jenna wasn't the woman I thought she was. She was someone else entirely. And now, I was about to make sure she regretted ever thinking I was weak enough to let this slide. I was holding enough proof to burn Jenna's world to the ground. The envelope was thick, crisp. I ran my fingers over the cash, wondering how much my marriage was worth. $5,000? 10? Was this a one-time payment, or was she running a subscription-based betrayal service? And then a darker thought hit me. What if Greg's wife already knew? Because think about it, Jenna was way too relaxed. She wasn't sneaking around. She wasn't being careful. Either she was the worst cheater in history, or she knew she didn't have to worry about getting caught. Which meant maybe, just maybe, his wife was already looking the other way. Only one way to find out. I set the cash back in Jenna's bag, zipped it up, and grabbed my laptop. Greg's wife, let's call her Lauren, was easy to find. She was all over social media, the perfect CEO's wife. Charity events, luxury vacations, date nights with a man who was very clearly paying a whole lot of people to keep his secrets. So I sent her an email. No dramatic subject line. No, you need to see this. Just, hey, I think you should know. I kept it short. Just the facts. The receipts. The timestamps. The little gift-wrapped disaster her husband had been sneaking around with. Then I hit send. And I waited. 1 hour. Nothing. 2 hours. Nothing. Then a reply. I sat up, heart pounding. I clicked. And stared. This user has blocked you. That was it. No response.
No shock.
Just blocked. I leaned back, exhaling through my nose. Well, that answered that. Lauren already knew. And she didn't care. Which meant I wasn't going to waste another second caring about Greg. He wasn't my problem. Jenna was. And now, she was about to learn exactly what happens when you gamble with the wrong man. You ever watch someone casually destroy their own life, completely unaware? It's fascinating. Like watching a person walk straight toward a cliff while they're too busy checking their phone to notice the ground disappearing beneath them. That was Jenna. She had no idea that I knew everything. No idea that her boss's wife had blocked me. No idea that I wasn't planning on confronting her. I was planning on ruining her from the inside out. And I started with the thing she valued most. Her career. Jenna was obsessed with her job. She lived for the power trips, the high-stakes deals, the status. She wasn't just climbing the corporate ladder. She was trying to skip rungs. And the worst part? She was actually good at it. Or at least she had been. Until I got involved. See, Jenna worked from home sometimes. And like any chronically overconfident cheater, she used our shared desktop to log into her work drive. Her one mistake, she never logged out. So while she was in the shower one morning, I sat down at the computer, opened her work folder, and got to work. I didn't delete files. I didn't add anything incriminating. That would be too obvious. Instead, I renamed everything. I took her client contracts, her quarterly reports, her financial projections, every major document she had worked on, and switched them with empty files. Then, for the extra layer of fun, I edited a few key reports, just enough to make them look real, until they completely collapsed under scrutiny. Then, when Jenna thought she was sending them to her managers, she was actually sending them to me. I tweaked them just a little more, enough to seem like human error. Typo here. A decimal point misplaced there. Then, I'd send them right back to her company. And the best part? She had no idea. She thought she was on track for another big promotion. Meanwhile, her co-workers were quietly panicking. The first time she got called into a meeting about errors, she laughed it off. Honest mistake. The second time, she blamed system issues. By the third time, her boss stopped smiling. By the fifth time, she was officially on thin ice. And Greg, her wonderful, successful, all-powerful boss, he didn't lift a single finger to help her. Because suddenly Jenna wasn't useful anymore. And once she wasn't useful, she was nothing. The moment everything started to fall apart for Jenna was a thing of beauty. It didn't happen all at once. No dramatic screaming matches.
No explosive confrontations.
Just a slow, painfully humiliating collapse, one mistake at a time. And I got to watch every second of it. See, Jenna prided herself on being the star player at work. She wasn't just a sales rep. She was the closer. The one who sealed the deals, made things happen, and got rewarded for it. And she made sure I knew it. Every time she got a promotion, I heard about it. Every time she landed a big client, she made sure to casually bring it up, like she had just personally invented capitalism. And whenever she talked about Greg, oh, that was the best. She called him a visionary, said he was the best leader she'd ever worked with. I wanted to ask, oh yeah? What exactly is he leading you into? But I didn't, because I had a better plan. Jenna had no idea that every file she sent to her company had been carefully edited for maximum chaos. One report showed negative profits where there should have been millions in revenue. A sales proposal somehow quoted prices in yen instead of dollars. An important financial document had an entire paragraph copied from Wikipedia. It was all small enough to be human error, but big enough to be completely disastrous. And the best part? She kept defending herself. She'd come home ranting about how her coworkers were idiots, how her managers didn't get it. They're acting like I suddenly forgot how to do my job, she scoffed one night, rolling her eyes. It's so weird. Oh, sweetheart, it's about to get a lot weirder. The final straw came at a big quarterly meeting. I wasn't there, obviously, but I didn't need to be. I got the whole breakdown later that night, straight from Jenna herself. She walked in looking like she had been dragged through an actual war zone, threw her bag down, poured herself a drink, stared at the floor for a full minute. Then finally she spoke. I got fired. I had to bite the inside of my cheek so hard to keep from smiling. I put on my best concerned husband face. What? Why? She let out a bitter laugh. They think I've been screwing up projects. That I'm losing focus. She made air quotes with her fingers, like she was the victim of a workplace conspiracy. Oh, I said. That's shocking. It's ridiculous, she muttered, shaking her head. They're so ungrateful. After everything I've done, after how hard I worked. I nodded sympathetically. And Greg? What did he say? And that was the moment. Her face froze, because for the first time since this all started, she realized Greg hadn't done a single thing to help her. No last-minute interventions.
No favors pulled.
No, I'll fix this. From the powerful, brilliant, visionary leader she had risked everything for. He had let her drown. And the best part? I didn't have to say a single word. I just sipped my drink, watching her world shrink around her. I wanted to ask, so, do you still think he's not as weak as me? But I didn't, because that moment, that was just for me. Jenna losing her job should have been the moment she broke down. Should have been. But instead, she doubled down. Because people like Jenna don't admit defeat. They don't apologize. They don't look inward and reflect. They blame. And oh, did she blame her boss, her coworkers, the economy, office politics, the alignment of the planets. Everyone was at fault except her. And that annoyed me. So I decided to help her figure it out. Started small. Little hints. Things that weren't outright accusations. But just close enough to set her on edge. The first time was over dinner. She was ranting about how her company was so incompetent for letting her go. I took a sip of my drink, nodded thoughtfully and said, "Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like someone was working against you." She froze mid-bite, just for a second. Then she laughed. Forced. Shaky. Right? It's like they were out to get me. I smiled. Said nothing else. Just let the idea settle into her brain. The next time was even better. She was scrolling through job listings, muttering to herself, when I casually asked, "Hey, does Greg have any openings? Thought you two were close." She visibly flinched. Then, she snapped, "That's not funny." I just shrugged. "I mean, you always said he was a great leader. Wouldn't he want to help you?" She slammed her laptop shut and walked out of the room. "Oh, sweetheart, we're just getting started." The real fun began when she started getting job rejections. Because here's the thing, she should have been getting offers. She had a strong resume, experience, a network. And yet, every interview got mysteriously canceled. Because what she didn't know was that every time she applied somewhere, I sent the hiring managers a very polite anonymous email. "Hi, just a heads up, Jenna, last name, was recently let go due to multiple performance issues and ethical concerns. Might want to check references before moving forward." I didn't outright say she was fired for fraud. I just let them think it. And it worked. One rejection. Then another. Then another. Jenna started getting paranoid. "I don't get it," she muttered one night, staring at her inbox. It's like someone's messing with me." I leaned back in my chair. "Weird." She stared at the screen, then at me. And for the first time, I saw it. A flicker of doubt. A tiny, nagging question forming in her mind. A suspicion. She didn't say anything. Not yet. But she felt it. And that was enough. Jenna's world was shrinking. No job.
No prospects.
No Greg swooping in to rescue her. She was stuck. And she knew it. Which meant she was getting desperate. One night, I came home to find her at the kitchen table, furiously typing away at her laptop. She barely looked up when I walked in. "Good day?" I asked. No response. I dropped my keys onto the counter. "Jenna?" She exhaled sharply through her nose, still typing.
I'm busy.
I stepped closer, glanced at her screen. Job application. Another one. I almost laughed, because I already knew how this story ended. She'd hit submit. The recruiter would see her name. And within 24 hours? Another rejection. I opened the fridge, grabbed a drink, and leaned against the counter. "You know, maybe you should try something different. New career path." She snorted. "Like what?" I shrugged. "I dunno. Maybe Greg has an opening for." The sound of her laptop slamming shut cut me off. She finally looked up. Eyes sharp. Cold. "Don't call him that." I blinked. "Call him what?" She stood, pushing the chair back roughly. "Greg. Like you know him. Like you're on his level." I felt my jaw tighten. "His level." She folded her arms. "You think you're funny, don't you? Sitting there, making little jokes? Acting smug." I stayed quiet. She scoffed. "You're pathetic." And then the final straw. She shook her head, let out a dry laugh and muttered, "He's definitely not as weak as you." I don't remember setting my drink down. I don't remember standing up. All I remember was how calm I felt, because suddenly, everything was clear. This wasn't just about cheating. This wasn't just about money. This was about power. Jenna had never respected me. She thought I was small. She thought I was weak. And that's why she thought she could get away with it. So now I was going to show her exactly what weakness looked like. Not with words. Not with yelling. With action. There's a certain kind of rage that doesn't come with screaming. It doesn't come with broken plates, with fists through walls, with shouting matches in the middle of the night. No, the worst kind of rage, the quiet kind. The kind that settles in your bones like ice. The kind that turns your heartbeat slow and steady. The kind where your hands don't shake, because you're too focused on what comes next. And what came next? Jenna was about to learn that I was never the weak one. That night, while she slept, I got to work. First, her closet. Every single designer dress, every expensive handbag, every pair of overpriced heels. All gone. Snip, snip, snip.
À tous en dollars silk blouse?
Now a pile of useless ribbons. Custom leather boots, ruined with a few well-placed knife slashes. Her precious handbags? I took a bottle of cooking oil and poured it straight inside, watching the fabric soak through. Everything she had flaunted, everything she had loved more than me. Destroyed. Then I moved on. Her laptop? Smashed. Her expensive perfume collection? Poured down the drain. Her jewelry? Gone. By the time I was done, her entire world was in pieces. And then, I went outside, because I wasn't finished. Jenna loved her car. A sleek, brand-new luxury SUV. Her status symbol. The one she had proudly told me Greg helped her pick out. I stood in the driveway, staring at it under the streetlights. Then I grabbed a crowbar. Crack. The windshield exploded into a web of broken glass. Thunk. The driver's side mirror snapped clean off, landing in the driveway with a clatter. I stepped back, breathing hard. The car looked as broken as she was about to feel. And finally, the last step. I pulled out my phone, ordered a taxi, set the destination, her parents' house. Then I went back inside, because it was time to wake her up. Jenna woke up to ruins. At first, it was just a quiet shift in the air. That split second where your brain senses something is wrong before your eyes fully open. Then, the scream. A raw, startled gasp that cracked into panic. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching as she sat up in bed, eyes flicking around the room. Her open closet? Empty. The floor? Covered in shredded fabric, ruined shoes, and the remains of her designer life. She bolted out of bed, heart pounding. What the? Then, she saw her dresser, the open drawers, the missing jewelry, the perfume bottles emptied and discarded. She spun toward me, stunned, breathless, furious. What did you do? I didn't answer. I just tossed her car keys onto the bed. She grabbed them instinctively, then froze, because her hands were wet. She looked down, her precious leather key fob, soaked in oil. Her fingers trembled as realization hit. She turned, bolted for the door, sprinted outside barefoot, wearing nothing but an oversized t-shirt, and stopped cold, because there, in the driveway under the flickering streetlight, was her car. Windows shattered, side mirror missing, paint scratched deep, like a wild animal had clawed through her perfect little life. Jenna's breath hitched. No, 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 no. Her fingers hovered over the handle like she was afraid to touch it. And then, she turned, slowly, finally looking at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You! Her voice cracked, and I smiled. Your ride's here. She blinked. What? Right on cue, the taxi pulled up to the curb. I gestured toward it. Figured you'd need a lift. She shook her head. A lift too? Your parents' place. The words hit her like a slap. She staggered back a step, lips parting. You? You're kicking me out? I tilted my head. Kind of figured it was overdue. Don't you think? Her mouth opened and closed, like she was trying to find the right angle to fight back. But there wasn't one, because she had nothing left. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, breathing fast, staring at me. And that's when I leaned in, dropped my voice to a whisper. Next time you ride an elevator, Jenna, maybe check who's sending you down. Her face drained of color. Because she knew. She knew. She knew. The taxi driver honked, impatient. I jerked my chin toward the car. You should go. Jenna just stood there, frozen, like she was too scared to step forward. I stepped back, turned, and walked inside, locked the door, and just like that, Jenna was gone. You ever see real fear in someone's eyes? Not the kind you get from a horror movie. Not the kind that comes from a bad dream. I'm talking about true, bone-deep, paralyzing fear. The kind that makes a person question everything they thought they knew about their own life. That's what I saw in Jenna's face as she stood there, in the wreckage of her own choices, staring at the locked door in front of her. And me? I just stood inside, watching through the peephole, waiting. For what? For the moment she finally understood. For the moment she realized this wasn't just an argument. This wasn't just a fight she could talk her way out of. This was the end. And that's when it happened. The breakdown. She took one shaky breath, then another. Then her hands started trembling. Her knees buckled. She sank down onto the porch like a puppet with its strings cut. Silent at first. Then a whisper.
No.
No, no, no. Her hands clawed into her own hair, gripping hard like she was trying to hold herself together. I should have felt bad. I should have. But I didn't. Because in that moment, all I could think about was every single time she had walked through that door, smiling, lying to my face. Every single time she had come home smelling like a man who wasn't me. Every single time she had cashed a check with my dignity on it. And now she was paying the price. She sat there for a long time, minutes. Then, finally, she pulled out her phone. I watched her dial, listened as it rang. And then, the voicemail. Greg wasn't answering. Jenna choked out a broken, bitter laugh. Because she knew. She finally knew. She was nothing to him. Just another woman on a payroll that no longer existed. Her hands shook as she stared at the phone, then at her surroundings. Like she was realizing, for the first time, that she had nowhere to go. No job, no money, no power, and worst of all, no control. I stepped away from the door, didn't say a word, didn't watch what happened next, because it didn't matter. She had two choices. She could get in the taxi, or she could sit on that porch until the reality of what she had done swallowed her whole. Either way, she was already finished. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't have to. I knew the exact moment she finally broke. Because after what felt like forever, after the silent shaking, the bitter laughter, the frantic calls to Greg that went nowhere, I heard it. The sound of her footsteps, slow, defeated. Then the soft click of the taxi door closing. And just like that, Jenna was gone. I exhaled. Not in relief. Not in victory. Just emptiness. Because that's the thing about revenge. It doesn't feel how you think it will. It's not a Hollywood moment. No music swells in the background. No dramatic one-liner makes it all feel worth it. It just ends. And you're left standing there, looking at the wreckage, wondering how it ever got this far. The next morning I woke up early, walked through the house, through the ruins of everything she used to own. The empty closet, the destroyed bags, the silence. And for the first time in a long time, I felt good. Not happy, not proud, just free. I grabbed my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and hovered over Jenna's name. Then I blocked her. Because some things, they don't deserve a second chance. And some people, they belong in the past.